What do Rise of the Robots, Virtuoso, and B.C. racers all have in common? Well, these three terrible games were all released in 1995, but they were not that year's worst games. At least, not according to Next Generation magazine, who gave all three of these games 2 stars out of 5. Believe it or not, Next Generation gave 59 different games a lower score than Rise of the Robots. I'm talking about the dreaded 1 star, and today we're going to go through all of these reviews and read the meanest, nastiest, and snarkiest quotes about all 59 of these awful games. This is the debut episode of Next Generation's 1-star reviews, and these are the 59 worst games of 1995.
He can run, there's no escape. He can hide, that's his fate. He can fight with all his might and never win. When good battles evil, the real game begins.
Up first, we have The Adventures of Batman and Robin on Genesis. On the heels of Konami's solid Super NES version from the hit TV show comes this mockery of a game. Sega bought the license, then totally ignored it as they made an extremely generic side-scroller without the look or feel of the TV show. Unless, of course, you remember that episode where Batman ran from left to right, throwing thousands of batarangs at everything in sight while the techno soundtrack blared away. Number 2, Alien Gate on CDI. A completely mindless attempt at the shooting title. Substandard graphics, appallingly easy gameplay, and sluggish control blend into a title tedious at its very best. Those who actually want shooting action on their CDI will do better to stick with games like Mystic Midway than to delve into this painfully deficient travesty. Number 3, Atari 2600 Action Pack on the Macintosh. Ah, nostalgia. Here at last, owners of the finest personal computer platform in the world, the Macintosh, can gleefully waste their high-end graphics and sound capabilities on the clunky, buzzy, blocky, repetitive, ugly-ass games they used to play on their Atari 2600, back when 64K was a wet silicate dream. Nostalgia better keep you awake, buddy son, because these Jurassic turds won't. Number 4, Barkley, Shut Up and Jam 2 on the Genesis. Fans of the original, were there any, will be glad to see Acclaim has added more than 2,000 pieces of animation. 25 jams, 22 characters, 8 outdoor court secret codes, and stats that you can save. All this makes Barkley 2 far superior than the first effort, which was awful. But despite how much this game tries, it just doesn't capture basketball or street ball particularly well. As for the license, we have a feeling that the only thing Charles Barkley did for this game was say, "You can put the rock in the hole." Then he collected a big fat check and left the apparently clueless developers to make this tragic game. Number 5, Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo. The summer's biggest movie has been turned into, surprise, another side-scrolling action game. Acclaim has spent a lot of money developing its in-house video and motion facility, and it shows here. Literally. The game looks incredible. But, you might ask, how does it play? Well, like Final Fight, except it's not good. The game's biggest accomplishment is making Maximum Carnage look like a masterpiece. To be avoided. Number 6, Beavis and Butthead on the Genesis. Trips to Turbo Mall 2000 and Highland High have their brief moments of humor, but if you're looking for Beavis and Butthead humor, just watch the show. This game is simply rotten. Even the biggest fans of the show won't enjoy the abysmal control, weak gameplay, and repetitive levels. Beavis and Butthead is a game that shows, while moronic humor and plenty of flatulence may make great TV, it stinks as a game. Number 7, Bread Hole Hockey 95 on the Genesis. Bread Hole Hockey 95 is one of the more feeble attempts to capture the brutal action of NHL hockey. The game includes the valuable player's license, which is wasted on a game that is nothing close to a simulation. The only element that saves Bread Hole Hockey 95 is that there are so many horrible hockey games already available. I mean, it's tough to pick only one loser. Number 8, Castlevania Dracula X on the Super Nintendo. Don't everybody jump just yet. This isn't exactly a new Castlevania game. Actually, this is a port of the PC Engine title Dracula X, making it more than 2 years old, and it shows. Whip fetishists may get a kick out of it, but everybody else should steer clear. Speaking of which, number 9, Club Drive on the Jaguar. Imagine driving around a junkyard in a slow car while suffering bouts of blindness, and you'll have a good idea of what to expect from Club Drive. Designed as a hard drive-in clone, almost every aspect of this game that would have been entertaining is destroyed by the title's sluggish response, annoying physics, and tepid gameplay. This is one to be avoided at all costs. Number 10, Corpse Killer on the Sega 32X. It's not the game that's so bad. Corpse Killer is a decent shooter with some great video footage and some extremely repetitive shooting. What's awful is that you filled every orifice of your Genesis, and this is the best you can get. The only difference between the Sega CD and 32X version is the minuscule improvement in the video. But the upgrade is so small that only experts could notice. Put simply, don't shell out $200 for a Sega CD and $160 for a 32X, because all you're gonna get is a hefty power bill. Number 11, Cosmic Carnage. Objectively, we point to the abysmal graphics, the shocking neglect of audio, criminal presence of slowdown, and blatant showing off at the expense of gameplay. And despite a tip of the hat to the novelish inclusion of the pre-game armor selection, we conclude that Cosmic Carnage stinks. A sad, shambling mockery of a fighting game. Number 12, Cosmic Race on the PlayStation. Every once in a while, there comes a game title that seems to be missing that certain something that would make it a truly enjoyable game. Cosmic Race isn't quite that good. Although there are only a few titles available on the PlayStation, it's obvious, in comparison, that Cosmic Race is substandard on almost every level. The graphics are childish and uninspired, and the control is entirely awkward. If all were right with the world, this game would never have been made. Number 13, Cowboy Casino on the 3DO. Cowboy Casino Interactive Poker is intended to be both an entertainment and educational tool. You face off against 5 Old West card sharks, and as you play, info boxes supposedly help you learn to be a better card player. Unfortunately, the game is painfully slow, and while the Win at Poker manual will tell you what to do next, it never bothers to tell you why. In other words, you don't learn much or even enjoy playing the hands. Number 14, Creature Shock on PC. Virgin's Creature Shock is positive proof that a good game must consist of more than just flashy graphics and loud sound effects. Interactivity is at a low. The flaccid ship stages take the art of video gaming back by about 5 years alone. If the idea of a 2 CD shooter that requires a 486 and 4 megs of RAM to deliver a new version of Afterburner appeals, otherwise, don't waste your time or resources here. Number 15, Deep Space Nine on the Genesis. Deep Space Nine's slow-paced, side-scroller attempt at a game is sure to bring a tear to any gamer's eyes. And the running and jumping antics of Commander Sisko were sure to do the same to fans of the TV show. Number 16. Doraemon Yujo Densetsu on 3DO. The Doraemons is a kinda low-grade RPG intended for very young gamers, and as such, it's meant to be somewhat educational. The gameplay is so simple that you can move from scene to scene even if you don't know Japanese. But if you don't understand the language, you won't get much out of it. Even then, if you're more than 7 or 8 years old, this game is generally uninvolving. Number 17, Double Dragon on Neo Geo. Without an ounce of innovation, even on the, well, that's kinda neat level, Double Dragon is tired. Very tired. There are not any specifically notable aspects of this game, but then again, there's actually very little to complain about beyond the fact that the fighter Double Dragon has already been done several times over. You could do better. Number 18, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story on both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. More than a year ago, Virgin had planned to release Dragon, but wisely declined. In steps Acclaim, which has never seen a movie game that it wouldn't release. Virgin was right on the money when it decided not to release Dragon. If only Acclaim had a conscience, we wouldn't have had to waste our time reviewing this retread of a game. Number 19, Exo-Squad on Genesis. This game is based on the comic book and Saturday morning cartoon series of the same name. And let's hope whoever owns the license got their money's worth, because once this game is associated with Exo-Squad, that property won't be worth squat. The control system, especially during the fighting segments, is so poor, your character is often reduced to merely standing in place and wiggling as you desperately try to figure out what magical combination will actually pull off the move that you're thinking of. Unacceptable and bad. Number 20, Foreman for real on the Genesis. There seems to be no real effort put into any single aspect of this title, and the end result is arguably one of the poorest boxing efforts ever released.
Finally, some action heroes who know the meaning of action.
Change it.
Introducing the Beavis and Butthead video game. Feel the thrill of the chase, discover new and powerful weapons, and control the destinies of America's leading morons.
Whoa. For like heroes, these guys are stupid. Stupid.
2 morons, 3 different games. The Beavis and Butthead video game for Genesis, Game Gear, and Super NES. It rules.
And we're back with number 21, Jewels of the Oracle on PC. Jewels of the Oracle is being touted as the next Myst, but it's really just a mess. Sure, the graphics are pretty, sometimes beautiful, but where's the game? If you're just crazy about abstract puzzles, Jewels of the Oracle is right up your alley. Otherwise, just keep shopping. Number 22, Kasumi Ninja on Jaguar. Kasumi Ninja is a tragic example of what can happen when good ideas are poorly executed. Despite creative approaches in both character design and selection, the game's originality is spoiled by jerky animation, sluggish control, and baffling play mechanics that discourage up-close fighting. Kasumi Ninja is an intriguing approach to the classic fighter, but it just doesn't measure up. Number 23, Kawasaki Superbike Challenge on Super Nintendo. We always thought that a racing game should include the feeling of speed. Apparently, the developers of Kawasaki think otherwise. This title is the pits. You've got plenty of options for modifying your bike and some 20 different circuits to race on, including the Suzuka 8-hour endurance race. But every single track leaves you with the impression that you're racing through molasses on a tricycle. Number 24, LineDrive Baseball in the arcade. This is the ultimate non-interactive game, representing all of the absolute worst game design, playability, graphics, and cabinet displays. It's the perfect example of how not to make a video game. and it only receives 1 star out of kindness and because we couldn't give it any lower. Number 25, Little Devil on CDI. A children's game that takes full advantage of the CDI's full-motion video capability. The control is sluggish, offering the player almost no chance of making it through the often furiously paced action sequences. The various levels fail to offer anything more than a stimulus-response style of play that'll have most players, even children, disinterested inside of a few minutes. Number 26, Lords of Thunder on Sega CD. Lately, the Sega CD has been inundated with side-scrolling shooters, including Lords of Thunder, Kyo Flying Squadron, and Android Assault from Sega. Let's hope we're not seeing a trend. The game has its moments, but you've seen them and played through them hundreds of times before as well. Go away! Number 27, Maabus on PC. Maabus is an example of a rule all gamers should do well to keep in mind. The size of a game has no relation to its quality. Like most action games that run under Windows, this game is far too slow and clunky to qualify for any kind of arcade action. And yet, the gameplay is too shallow and simplistic for Maabus to qualify for anything more. Spend your money on something else. Number 28, Mazer on 3DO. We sincerely apologize to American Laser Games for giving it a tough time about continually producing the same title over and over. Hey folks, light gun games are fine by us, okay? Really. But just promise us that you're never going to put us through the kind of pain we went through when we attempted to play Mazer. Number 29, Mighty Max on the Super Nintendo. The sheer height of this game's creativity is that some stages have as many as 3, count 'em, 3 layers of scrolling in the background, and our tiny hero Max can stun his enemies and pick them up to throw them at other tiny enemies. Mighty Max is awful and no fun. Number 30, Mirage on PC. You know, with great graphics, you really don't need good gameplay, logical puzzles, or a clear interface. Oh no, wait, that's wrong. And that's what's wrong with this disc. Basically, it's like Myst in the Old West, only with even less cohesion and logic than Myst. Like spending minutes searching for the hot spot with your mouse? No? Well, then maybe you just stay away from this. Number 31, NBA Hang Time 95 on Sega CD. First things first, this game is by no means a sports simulation. It's more like NBA Jam without any of the charm. The CD access time is unbearably long, the players all look the same, the control is horrid, and it's possibly the worst basketball game of the year. But wait, there's more! You can play the ESPN2 World Tour and have sumo wrestlers dunking. Don't even put other games near this one, it could be contagious. Number 32, Night Trap on Sega 32X. 2 years and a couple of congressional hearings later, the infamous Night Trap is returned in all of its unexpurgated glory, mature rating in hand, rising slowly from the grave like the very vampires it features. It's so badly structured that you spend all your time following those damned OGs, tapping one button, and almost never getting to see the video this game's supposed to be about. Just forget it. Leave it alone. Let it die. Number 33, No Escape on Genesis. You're stuck controlling a character rotoscope from a real actor, which means his movements look real enough, but are limited and, unfortunately, near impossible to control. To make matters worse, you have to travel through 6 non-linear and graphically ugly levels, picking up over 90 objects, which you must combine to make weapons and traps. Keeping all this in mind, the only way to escape the annoying gameplay, repetitive soundtrack, and frustrating control is to not get caught buying this game. Number 34, Novastorm on 3DO. This is the latest in a long and venerable line of shooters in which your ship is pasted onto the screen, effectively blocking you from seeing the oncoming enemies, and leaving no shadow or any other clue to how your ship relates to the backgrounds. Microcosm was bad enough, but Novastorm doesn't even take advantage of a knockout intro. There are some nice cutscenes, but not much else. Number 35, The Orion Conspiracy. Domark's new science fiction adventure has a lot of the same problems you'd find in a poorly made movie. Bad acting, bad dialogue, and lots of dead time. The dialogue is absolutely abysmal. It's awkward and unbelievable, and it's peppered with unnecessary foul language, as if the game designers were young children trying to sound like adults by using a lot of four-letter words. Then again, the voice actors in The Orion Conspiracy may have made Hamlet sound a little childish. Number 36, Paparazzi, Tale of Tinseltown on Macintosh. Groan. Just in case the title doesn't tell all, the monthly What Were You Thinking award lands squarely on this double CD set. For computer first-timers like, say, your parents, Paparazzi offers something flashy and mildly amusing to showcase their new CD drive. For gamers, it offers a pair of attractive mirrored coasters. Number 37, Powerful Pro Baseball on PlayStation. There's several PlayStation titles riding the fence as to whether or not they'll be coming to the US. Power Baseball isn't even in the same field that the fence surrounds. The game could not only have been done on a 16-bit machine, but it actually could have been done better. Play ball, but play it with another game. Number 38, The Punisher on Genesis. Nothing new and not much good can be found in The Punisher. Capcom wouldn't even burn early EEPROMs because it didn't deem The Punisher worthy of the expense. After playing this game, we have to agree. The person responsible for putting out The Punisher deserves a good spanking. Number 39, Radical Rex on Super NES. Forget the sales reports pointing to the mascot death of 1994, the recent trend to aim for an older audience, or avoiding cute things and small. Of course, none of that means the Radical Rex can't be a great little platformer. Unfortunately, it isn't. The action is reminiscent of games like Adventure Island and Joe and Mac at times, but it's consistently flat, unmotivating, and not up to par with other platform games. You've seen it before, usually better. Number 40, Rally Chase on Neo Geo CD. Rally Chase on the new Neo Geo CD system is an overhead racing game played out on a global course. Regrettably, the many courses are largely the same and the action is less than intense. The view, combined with the lack of any real innovation in track designs, makes this game better suited for days gone by.
To master Kasumi Ninja, and to defeat the evil ninja Gyaku, you need razor-sharp reflexes, superior strength, and a really good cheat sheet with all the death moves.
Kasumi Ninja only on the 64-bit Jaguar.
Yeah!
And we're back with number 41, Real Pinball on 3DO. Real Pinball is an ironic title. It offers a choice of 5 increasingly complicated pinball machines, but the game's idea of real is to tile the machine back into a simple one-point perspective, serving only to obscure the action while the ball moves at an agonizing crawl. 3DO owners will have to wait a little bit longer for a real pinball game to appear. Number 42, Red Alarm on Virtual Boy. Red Alarm was intended to be the Virtual Boy's answer to Star Fox, but the game seems to show that, at least for the time being, Nintendo should stick with the speed and performance of bitmapped graphics. Number 43, the Ren and Stimpy show Time Warp on Super Nintendo. When Nickelodeon fired creator John Kricfalusi, the heart and soul were sucked out of the pair. This game was the final nail in the coffin. From the very first level, you spend half the time chasing down flies and such, making the action more frustrating than challenging. Character control is also just short of awful. Ick. Number 44, Shadow of the Beast 2 on Sega CD. The original Shadow of the Beast attained a certain cult status on the Amiga almost 5 years ago, and the following year, so did the sequel. But there's been a lot of water under the bridge since those games originally appeared. Even though the designers tried to spruce it up by adding a few rendered cutscenes, it still doesn't help much considering the game's overall stilted animation and poor control. Too little, too late. Number 45, Shadow, War of Succession on 3DO. Way of the Warrior was a disappointment, but Shadow makes that game look like a work of genius. It's as if the actors just showed up wearing whatever they had in the closet at home on that particular day. The control is butt awful, and the fight animation must have all of 2 frames per move. Use the disc as a coaster for your coffee mug. You'll get more use out of it and enjoy it more. Number 46, SimTown on Macintosh. While Maxis released this title as a children's game, the large contingent of SimCity fans will probably ensure that SimTown is destined to disappoint both old and young alike. SimTown's sadly limited building options, along with the painfully slow performance, ensures that the game stays boring and repetitive after only a few turns. It's a good title for parents whose kids spend too much time on the computer. Number 47, Space Adventure Cobra on Sega CD. At the rate the Sega CD is dying, we could probably expect to see more titles like this. A squarely average graphic adventure, Space Adventure Cobra's cliched story about space pirates is punched up only slightly by lots of mild swearing and teasing hints of sex and nudity. If you're much past puberty, it's pretty damn dull. Number 48, Galactic Pinball on Virtual Boy. Galactic Pinball gives Virtual Boy owners a title they can take out of the box and play without actually experiencing any real fun. Doesn't really matter how good this game is since you're gonna get it anyway. But if you were expecting to squeeze a few months of play out of your machine before investing in a new title, you might want to think again. Number 49, Speedy Gonzales in Los Gatos Bandidos on Super Nintendo. Speedy Gonzales seems stricken with some kind of animated arthritis as he's generously given perhaps 2 or 3 frames of animation per action. On top of which, he's saddled with momentum that makes you feel like you're controlling a large walrus rather than a mouse. In other words, this is a darn bad game. Number 50, Spider-Man, the animated series on Genesis. New York City is on the verge of blah blah blah, and only fill in the hero's name here can save it from the real villain. Fill in the villain name here. The point here is that Spider-Man follows a long line of games that are exactly the same with a few costume changes. The whole game is so horribly familiar and boring that Spider-Man isn't even worth the 1 star we give it. Number 51, Sterling Sharp, End to End on Super Nintendo. This is by-the-numbers game design at its very worst. It takes a slice of John Madden football, a touch of NFL 95, and a dash of Troy Aikman football, then stirs them into a mesh you can easily recognize, quickly start to play, and then throw in disgust. Number 52, Strahl on 3DO. Strahl is a title that's placed squarely in the Dragon's Lair tradition, this time using anime-styled characters and action. We wish there was a better way to say this, but basically, it sucks. There are 48 ending screens, and the thought of playing this enough times to see them all ranks right up there with having our eyelids stapled open and being forced to watch Geraldo reruns. Thanks, but no. Number 53, Tecmo Super Bowl III Final Edition on Super Nintendo. In the primitive days of the 8-bit NES, Tecmo Super Bowl was the ultimate console football game to own. The company still makes football games, and their look hasn't changed all that much. Compared to the other 16-bit football games, Tecmo Super Bowl Final Edition just isn't in the same league. Number 54, Virtual Volleyball on Saturn. In Virtual Volleyball, the first polygonal volleyball game to appear on any system, it's clear the polygons don't necessarily make a good game. Yes, the players are in full 3D, but with limited control over where they can move and what they can do when they get there, it's not much fun controlling them. Number 55, Warlock on the Genesis. With Warlock, Acclaim manages to suck all the life from a bad movie and further demonstrates the uselessness of the side-scrolling game. Every trite level brings you face to face with the likes of the undead, animated statues, ghostly monks, and the dark Warlock himself. Oh, and here's a new one. As you run from left to right, you can pick up healing magic potions and one-ups. All this game does is prove that bad movies make horrible side-scrolling action games. Number 56, World Hockey 95 on PC. What do you get when you combine so-so graphics, bad full-motion video commentary, and easy-to-beat opponents? The answer? World Hockey 95. Number 57, Yu Yu Hakusho on 3DO. Unlike the kart version for the Super Famicom, this fighting game borrows heavily from its anime counterpart. The special moves, while simple enough to execute, range from run-of-the-mill to boring. Avoid this one at all costs. Number 58, Zaxxon's Mother Base 2000 on Sega 32X. Either retro gaming is hip, or ideas for games are just drying up. The revival of titles like Donkey Kong, Tempest, Pitfall, Pac-Man, and now Zaxxon's Mother Base 2000 are bringing the arcade action of the 1980s to the home. Why? Zaxxon's Mother Base 2000 is graphically ugly, slow, boring, repetitive, and a game that is truly unworthy of any stars. We'll still give it 1 star in the memory of the much more playable original. And finally, number 59, Zorro, a cinematic action adventure on PC. Once players have gotten a grip of the controls and consulted the Ouija board for the playing instructions, they will relive the somewhat less than famous adventures of Zorro. Remember that episode of Zorro where he used his whip to fight off that man-eating plant? Unless you've got a fetish for black leather masks and whips, or you're an accredited psychic, we strongly recommend you avoid this title like the plague.
T&E ソフトが送るバーチャルボーイの決定版レッドアラーム。
Hey, thanks for watching this debut episode of Next Generation's 1-Star Reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you'll be happy to know that this is just the first part of a 7-episode series that's going to be running all throughout the summer. Now, here's the question I have for you. What was Next Generation's meanest review from 1995? Oh boy, there really were some biting reviews here. Personally speaking, I like the Strahl one, where they would rather have their eyeballs stapled open while watching Geraldo reruns. Also, I forget what it was for, but it was the game that's so bad that it might actually be contagious. Ah, that's great. Let me see your favorite reviews in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back soon with another episode looking at the games of 1996. It was a good year for gaming, but you know, it was also a bad year for gaming, as you'll see. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,